should you play Resto Shaman in Season 2 of The War Within? Well, my goal for this series is to help you make that decision because I said at the beginning of all of these, no one except for you can make that decision. However, in today's video, I'm going to be laying out my experience on the PTR with Resto Shaman and kind of my thought process when I'm deciding if I personally want to main Resto Shaman to help you guys make your decision. And there will be one of these made for each healer spec, so stay tuned for those so that way you can kind of mix and match which ones you're debating between. Now, Resto Shaman's been probably the one I've been asked about the most because honestly, like admittedly, it is probably the most doomed on spec right now by the community, at least from what I have seen. So a lot of people who are returning Resto Shamans or maybe debating between Resto Shaman and other healers are kind of wondering, you know, what's going on. So that's going to be what I'm going to try to do. And now, disclaimer, the first chunk of this video might sound a little negative, but I'm just laying out what the worries are coming into the season and the current state of the PTR. And don't get me wrong, there are some, there's quite a few, but I think one of my strengths is that I'm able to, you know, see the positive. And instead of thinking about how, you know, negative things are now, thinking how that can lead to the positive. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do in today's video, especially in the later half. So stay tuned for that. Don't skip this video because I'm being negative. All right, let's get into it. So let's first talk about the rotation and gameplay patterns. What can you expect to be doing for most of your globals? What is the gameplay experience going to be for the player? Well, it's very similar to what it is currently with at least the concept of what you're doing. You're using a bunch of maintenance like blanketed hots with your healing rain, your earth shield on like you and the tank or you and a DPS. You're blanketing with riptides and then using your healing stream totems to kind of like maintain those health bars. So you're kind of moving all the health bars like steadily with those sources. And then you're supplementing that with your healing wave and your healing surge casts. Now, this does lead to a problem, and that problem is that you're kind of caught now. Like, you've been faking it this whole time that you can maintain both styles of play, but now without ancestral guidance, without that one more cooldown in your rotation, you've been caught. And as a Resto Shaman, you're kind of trying to play the part of both what a Resto Druid does, how Resto Druids move health bars simultaneously, and a Holy Priest with your spot healing. You're trying to do these big chunky spot heals to supplement that. And to be honest, on the PTR, currently it does feel like you're playing the worst of both worlds. Or maybe that's just a little too harsh, but to put it simply is that both halves of what you're trying to do, instead of supplementing each other, neither of them are kind of pulling as much weight as you would hope. So it's just making everything kind of compound and feel worse. So your maintenance hots are not topping people up quick enough. So if everyone takes a big slam, your healing rain, your riptide hots, and like the occasional chain heal is not topping people up to 100% health as fast as you would like, you know, before that next big slam of damage. So then you're trying to supplement with more casted heals, and then that just completely eliminates what Healing Wave is trying to do. Healing Wave is supposed to be like the mana efficient alternative to Healing Surge. However, you're kind of having to cast Mana Surge to heal up quick enough. So in Season 1 or in Resto Shaman's past, you were topping up health bars very quickly. You know, your maintenance hots were pulling more weight, your spot heals were healing even more, like more percentage of a health bar, so you're able to top up people with less globals. And then part of the fun of Resto Shaman is that then that frees up some globals for you to cast some damaging spells. Your Chain Lightnings, you know, like reapply Flame Shock and like, you know, just do a bunch of damage in that downtime. However, currently in some of the PTR dungeons as a shaman, it feels like you don't have that freedom. You don't have those globals to cast damage because you're constantly trying to top people up, and that's one of the biggest problems right now. And I know we're healers, you know, I'm sitting here like complaining that we have to heal as a healer, but when you think of what other specs are doing, like Disc Priest and Mistweaver Monk, is they are doing their damage globals at the same time as they're healing. Like there's that maintenance healing from their damage, but Resto Shamans don't really have that outside of Healing Rain, and Healing Rain is only like worth applying constantly if you're running like Totemic Shaman and refreshing that Surging Totem and hoping that your tank doesn't move out of it because it's kind of stuck there unless you want to commit more cooldowns to move it. So a lot of what you're doing is just trying to keep up, and that is where some of the frustration comes from the community. Now, I do want to say that that's kind of like most of the negative stuff that's going on, is just that they removed ancestral guidance, and you're now there's a hole, and you're trying to work hard to fill that hole in your play style. But there is actually good news. Like, that is bad, sure, but my job is to see the positive and to see the positive potential outcomes. So let's talk about what you bring to the table as a Resto Shaman. Are you going to be sitting in queues all day? Honestly, no. You do share your mastery buff with the other shaman specs, the DPS shaman specs, which they are looking very good. And you also share lust with them and mages and evokers. So a lot of what you bring to the table is kind of overlapping with some specs that odds are you're going to see quite a bit of. However, one thing that you bring to the table is that you can boost everyone's max HP temporarily. So this pairs very well with Shadow Priest's Fort buff, and then like Balance Druid's Mark of the Wild to just add so much more durability to your party. And neither of those specs bring Lust or are a Shaman, so you do bring that. Like, you will have compositions that will be built around you, so it's not like, although you do kind of overlap a lot of your usefulness with other specs, don't let that deter you. But in order for you to, be worth taking into those comps or worth building those comps around, Resto Shaman just has to be able to pull their weight in the throughput department, and we will get into that. But first, let's talk about what is good about Resto Shaman. Like, I've kind of been a negative Nancy up until this point, and I want to talk from now on about what is good about 11.1 Resto Shaman. First off, the raid build has legs. Don't get me wrong, if you look at like the logs, it's not at the top, it's not like going crazy and popping off, but the pieces of the puzzle are there. They're just tiny pieces, and that we need bigger pieces of the puzzle to make it easier to put together. However, the pieces are there. You have all of your Riptide duplication, all of your Riptide modifiers, Riptide's boosting the healing that you're doing, your chain heals are boosting your Riptide, like, everything is there. And then to top it all off, they did remove Primordial Wave, which a lot of people are rejoicing about, and they replaced it with Whispering Wave, which is kind of the Resto Shaman's version of Invigorating Mist that Mistweavers have, the cleave healing that their spot heal's doing. So you can spread out a ton of Riptides, especially if you're running Farseer and Raid, and then do a ton of cleave healing with your healing waves. The only problem is that you're taking that time to cast Healing Wave, which is just such a slow cast. And Whispering Waves, the problem with it is that it only really gets good enough value to be worth it in a raid environment. If only it did like more cleave healing, or if Healing Wave did more healing, then you would see that in Mythic Plus probably. So all in all, like, the pieces to a great, fun, interactive, and powerful raid build are there. The numbers just are not yet. Now, that moves me on to the next point, the next good thing, and that is that Resto Shaman is only one buff away from feeling complete. Now, that one buff can be a couple of different things, though. So number one is they could buff some of that that maintenance healing. So like Healing Rain can just do more healing, and then all of a sudden you're topping up health bars quicker in Mythic Plus and have to cast less spot heals. Or they could make the spot heals of Resto Shaman feel less pitiful. I remember back in Shadowlands, I would watch my guild leader play his Resto Shaman. He would cast a Healing Surge. It would do like 40% of a health bar. Now on the PTR, it feels like your Healing Surges and Healing Waves do like 10% of a health bar. It's very pitiful. And I've already kind of touched on this, but Healing Wave is supposed to be that mana efficient alternative, which makes sense in a raid environment. You have other healers to kind of like pick up that slack while you're casting Healing Wave for a year. But in Mythic Plus, it feels like you almost have no time to cast this. If you do cast Healing Wave, yes, it's more mana efficient than Healing Surge, but the whole time you're taking to cast that, they're taking more and more damage, then you just have to supplement with more Healing Surges anyway. So Healing Wave either needs to do much more healing, which is kind of scary with Whispering Waves, that they could tweak that as always, or Healing Surge has to do more healing, or Chain Heal has to do more healing. Like, one of these major sources of their spot healing has to just be chunkier. That way you're spending less globals doing healing, doing the same amount of healing. So like I'm saying, is it feels like you are just one of these buffs, like one of these major buffs, like a 50% buff to Healing Waves healing. That's very big, but like one massive buff to one of these healing sources and you're there. You are golden. Like, all the pieces start to come together. You're like, Ancestral Guidance, who? So good news, you are one buff away from feeling amazing. Now, moving on. Of all the healers, Resto Shaman feels like it is in the state that is the most likely to get a good positive rework. Now, I've mentioned this a ton. They removed Ancestral Guidance, so Resto Shaman right now is like searching for that power somewhere. They're like, I know Ancestral Guidance a lot of times was just like stacked on top of their other cooldowns, so you didn't think you would miss it that much as a Resto Shaman, but really you do. And on top of that, like your season 1 tier set, believe it or not, was like, it was very good. And you're coming on to this new tier set that plays around Healing Rain, and it's like, it's, you know, it's there, it's something. So you've just taken a bunch of hits coming from season 1, and after this last patch notes where all they did was just reduce the mana cost of Healing Wave, it really tips me off that they have something planned. They're like stockpiling a few different changes that are going to be either a minor rework or hopefully a major rework to how Resto Shaman works and how it gets all of its healing value. So I do think of all the healers, it's like you and Holy Priest are kind of like prime for a rework, especially after the state that Resto Shaman has been in for up until now in the PTR. Even more positives about Resto Shaman is that you are still a Swiss Army knife. You have so many tools, a Curse Dispel, Poison Dispels, you have Purge, you have an AoE Stun, that's a very short cooldown if you talent that way, or it hits twice if you talent that way, you know? You have an AoE Knock-Up, or it can be an AoE Knock-Back. Like, you have so much, a ranged kick that's on a short cooldown, like, you have so much, and on top of that, like I said, you do add bonus health to everyone's health bars in your party, so very solid Swiss knife. That is not changing. On top of that, a lot of the changes, although they have put Resto Shaman in this like compromised state currently, what they've done or what they attempted to accomplish, they have done, and that is to reduce the button bloat on this spec. It still has some ways to go. They still have like 10,000 different totems that do like these tiny little things that you need to know how they all work and stuff. But for the most part, they have removed some buttons that you can now free up keybinds. And that is great. You don't have to have mana tied on a keybind. It's now just tied to your totem. You don't have Ancestral Guidance, which is like, yeah, that power is still kind of, we're still searching for it somewhere, but you don't have to have that keybound. Also, Primordial Wave is now also passive in Whispering Waves now. So what they're doing is they are stepping in the right direction. They just need to stay on top of it and make sure that it doesn't stay down where it's at and kind of like give it more to supplement the things that they're taking away. And I do believe that they will do that with either buffs or a rework. So when you're asking yourself, should I main Resto Shaman? I'm hearing all of this negative. Yes, things don't feel as great as they did in Season 1 currently, but that doesn't mean that they won't by the time that like the raid comes out and stuff. So really keep that in the back of your mind. Don't let all the noise keep you from maining your favorite spec in Resto Shaman if that is your favorite spec. However, just understand that everything that I have said, like a lot of this stuff, like them getting a potential buff or a rework in the future, is speculation. It's just after having put a bunch of hours on the PTR into Shaman, it's the only thing that makes sense to me right now, is that that's the direction that they're heading in. So I just have to be totally honest and say that, yes, if you choose to main Resto Shaman right now on the PTR, it doesn't feel as great as it does in Season 1 due to a couple different factors that we've mentioned in this video. However, I do believe that there are changes on the horizon. Just know that that is a risk that you would take if you choose to main it. So if you are debating between Resto Shaman and another spec, definitely keep both of those specs geared. And at the end of the day, go with what you find the most fun. And I'll be honest, Shaman might still be that, especially for me. It's second right underneath Mistweaver still. But hopefully after watching this video, you have a little bit more of an understanding of where all the frustration is coming from. And I hope that you enjoyed this background footage. It was just an absolute chaotic slog where I'm pretty sure no one in the group other than myself and the tank had ever seen this dungeon before. So like totems were going off and casts were going off. It was just like chaos. So hopefully you enjoyed that. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Good luck in your decision. Hopefully I didn't steer you away from Shaman. That was not my goal. My goal was to kind of put you at ease if you have let all this noise kind of get to you, and help you better make a more informed decision yourself. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about any other healers, let me know down in the comments below so I know which healer to make next, which one you guys are kind of debating between the most, and I'll definitely make that for you. While you're down there, make sure and hit the like button and make sure that you're subscribed. I have so much Season 2 content prepped and ready to go for you guys, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subbed so you don't miss it when it goes live. And also, a huge thank you to the patrons that keep this channel alive. Thank you so much if your name's on the screen. Guys, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.